War Marshal Kethvar stood alone on his bridge. Around him, the bodies of his bridge crew lay dead, killed when the ghost swarm had found his ship. He was the only one left alive on the Eternal Destroyer, and he knew he wouldn't live much longer. Outside his viewport, he could see the remains of his fleet. Thousands of ships floated dead in space. Some had been cut apart by invisible weapons. Others had simply vanished, erased from existence. A few were caught in temporal loops, exploding and reforming over and over again. The human ship appeared in front of him, flickering between dimensions like a ghost made of metal and death. "Human vessel," Kethvar said into his communication system. "I am War Marshal Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. I surrender my fleet to you." On the USS Vengeance, Jake Morrison heard the alien's words. The consciousness amplifier was burning through his mind, but he could still think clearly enough to make decisions. "Atlas," Jake said. "What do the Zephyrians do with species that surrender to them?" "According to historical records," Atlas replied, "the Zephyrian Empire has never accepted surrender from any species. They believe other lifeforms are inferior and must be destroyed." Jake looked at the tactical display. Less than 100 Zephyrian ships were still functional out of the original 10,000. But those 100 ships still carried enough firepower to destroy several human worlds. "Ryan," Jake said to his weapons officer, "can you target the remaining ships with the ghost swarm?" Ryan Foster's voice was strained. The neural feedback was affecting all of them now. "Yes, Captain. But I don't know how much longer I can maintain control." Jake made his decision. "Do it. All ships." "Captain," Dr. Amy Watson said urgently, "everyone's brain patterns are reaching critical levels. The consciousness amplifier is going to burn out in minutes. Then we'd better finish this quickly." The ghost swarm spread through the last Zephyrian ships like a plague of light. War Marshal Kethvar watched through his viewport as the tiny drones cut through his hull and began destroying his ship from the inside. "You will pay for this," he said to the human ship. "The Empire will send more fleets. We will find your world and burn it to ash." Jake heard the alien's threat through the communication system. It confirmed what he already knew. There could be no survivors. "Kelly," Jake said, "quantum disruptors. Target the flagship." Kelly Brooks focused her failing mind on the Zephyrian command ship. The quantum disruptor fired, creating a tear in space that reached out toward the Eternal Destroyer. War Marshal. Kethvar had time for one last thought before his ship was erased from existence. The humans were not the weak species his people had believed. They were something far more dangerous. As the last Zephyrian ships died, Jake felt the consciousness amplifier beginning its final surge. Atlas had warned them that the system would eventually destroy itself, and the time had come. "Everyone disconnect from the neural interfaces," Jake ordered. "Now!" Ryan Foster and the other weapons operators pulled away from their stations just as the consciousness amplifier overloaded. Sparks flew from the neural interface chairs and several computer systems exploded. "Is everyone okay?" Jake asked. "We're alive," Ryan said, though he looked exhausted. "Atlas," Jake said, "are there any surviving Zephyrian ships?" "Negative, Captain Morrison. All enemy vessels have been destroyed or disabled beyond repair." Jake felt a moment of relief, but it didn't last long. He knew what came next. "Atlas, what's the status of the consciousness amplifier?" "The system is destroyed, Captain. But before it failed, it activated the ship's final protocol, which is, the USS Vengeance will transmit all of its technological data to Earth, then self-destruct to prevent the technology from falling into enemy hands." Jake had known this moment would come, but it still hurt. "How long do we have?" 30 minutes to complete the data transmission. "Then the ship's reactor will overload. Can we evacuate to the USS Frontier?" "Yes, Captain. All personnel can be evacuated safely." But Jake wasn't thinking about evacuation yet. He was thinking about the data transmission. "Atlas, will Earth be able to build more ships like the USS Vengeance?" "Yes, Captain. The technology will allow humanity to construct an entire fleet of advanced warships. Your species will no longer be defenseless against alien threats." As Atlas began transmitting data to Earth, Jake thought about what they had accomplished. A single human ship had destroyed an entire alien invasion fleet, but more importantly, they had sent a message to the Zephyrian Empire. "Atlas," Jake said, "I want you to do something before the ship self-destructs." "What do you require, Captain?" "I want you to send a message to the Zephyrian Empire. Tell them exactly what happened here. Tell them that humanity is no longer prey. Captain, Lisa Barnes said from the sensor station. I'm detecting quantum communication signals. The message is going out to every Zephyrian world simultaneously. Jake could imagine the reaction when the message reached the alien empire. They would learn that their greatest invasion fleet had been destroyed by a single human ship. They would see recordings of their vessels being erased from existence by impossible weapons. Evacuation complete, Pete Collins reported. Everyone from both ships is aboard the USS Frontier. Jake was the last person to leave the USS Vengeance. As he walked through the corridors one final time, he thought about the original crew who had died trying to complete this mission 200 years ago. Their sacrifice had made this victory possible. Goodbye, Atlas, Jake said as he reached the airlock. Goodbye, Captain Morrison. It has been an honor to serve with you. Jake joined his crew aboard the USS Frontier and watched through the viewport as the USS Vengeance began to glow with internal energy. The ship's reactor was building toward overload. Take us to a safe distance, Jake ordered. As they moved away, the USS Vengeance exploded in a burst of light that could be seen across several star systems. The most powerful weapon humanity had ever built was gone, but its legacy would live forever. 3 days later, Earth received Atlas's data transmission. Within hours, shipyards across human space began retooling to build new vessels based on the USS Vengeance's technology. The Ghost Swarm, quantum disruptors, and multidimensional drives would soon protect every human world. But the real victory wasn't the new technology. It was the message that had been sent to the galaxy. On the Zephyrian homeworld, High Command watched the recordings from War Marshal Kethvar's fleet with growing fear. They had sent 10,000 ships to destroy a weak species, and all 10,000 ships were gone. Destroyed by weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. What are these humans? The High Commander asked. We don't know, his intelligence officer replied. But we recommend that all fleets avoid human space until we can develop countermeasures. The recommendation was accepted immediately. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrian Empire marked an entire region of space as forbidden territory. The word spread quickly through the galaxy. Other alien species, many of whom had been conquered or enslaved by the Zephyrians, began to whisper about the humans. The small, seemingly primitive species that had built a single ship capable of destroying an entire empire's fleet. Some species sent messages to Earth, asking for help against their own oppressors. Others simply avoided human space, not wanting to provoke a species that could erase their enemies from existence. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but he didn't feel like one. He felt like someone who had been part of something much larger than himself. The crew of the USS Vengeance, both the living and the dead, had changed the course of human history. Years later, when Earth launched its first fleet of advanced warships, Jake stood in the observation deck of a space station and watched them go. The ships looked different from the USS Vengeance, but they carried the same message to the galaxy. Humanity would no longer be prey. The ghost ship had awakened, fought its final battle, and died. But its spirit lived on in every human ship that followed, carrying the same promise to the stars. No one would hunt humanity again. The massive alien ship floated in the darkness of space like a metal mountain. Inside its gleaming halls, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered for an important meeting. The Drakmori Empire had called this meeting to discuss their next target for conquest. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly into the great chamber. His 6 arms shook with worry and his blue skin had turned pale. The Rilani were a peaceful race who had watched the Drakmori Empire grow stronger for hundreds of years. They had seen world after world fall to the Empire's mighty war machine. The chamber was huge, with walls that stretched up so high they seemed to touch the stars. At the center sat the Drakmori War Council. These aliens were tall and strong, with thick gray skin and red eyes that glowed like fire. Their leader, Commander Vexthol, sat on a throne made of metal from conquered worlds. In a small cage near the wall, a human sat quietly. His name was Kyle Harrison, and he had been captured 3 months ago when his ship was exploring space. The Drakmori kept him as a sample of the species they planned to invade next. Kyle looked calm, but his eyes were sharp and watching everything. "Speak, Rilani," Commander Vexthul said in a deep voice that echoed through the chamber. "Why have you come to waste our time?" Zethkar stepped forward. His voice was soft but desperate. "Great ones, I come with a warning about the world you plan to attack. The planet called Earth. The other aliens in the room started laughing. Some made rude noises with their mouths. They had all heard about Earth from their scouts. It was a small blue planet with creatures that still use chemical rockets and metal weapons. A warning, Vexthul smiled, showing teeth like sharp knives. About a world that has not even reached their own moon with their people? Please listen, Zethkar begged. We have watched these humans for many years. They are not like other species. They do not think like other species. When they are trapped, they do not give up. When they are hurt, they become stronger. When they face something impossible, they find a way to make it possible. Commander Vexthul stood up from his throne. He was 3 times taller than the small Rilani. We have conquered 1,000 worlds, little one. We have defeated species with energy weapons that could destroy stars. We have crushed civilizations that could travel between galaxies. And you want us to fear a species that still burns fuel to fly? Zethkar's voice grew more urgent. Yes, because they turn everything into a weapon. Their children play games that teach them war. Their stories are full of impossible victories. They look at a problem and think, how can I solve this? Not this cannot be solved. The War Council laughed even louder. One of the generals, a huge alien with 4 arms, spoke up. Even if they were clever, what could they do? Our shields can stop their strongest bombs. Our weapons can destroy their cities from space. Our soldiers are stronger and faster than any human. Zethkar looked around the room with sad eyes. You do not understand. Humans do not fight the way you expect them to fight. They do not follow rules. They do not accept that something cannot be done. We have seen their history. They once fought a war that lasted 6 years and killed millions of their own people. But they did not stop. They built weapons that could split atoms. They turned the power of stars into bombs. Ancient history, Vexthul said with a wave of his hand. Their weapons cannot even scratch our ship armor. That is not the point, Zethkar said. The point is that they made weapons from nothing. They took the basic forces of nature and turned them into tools of war. And they did this while fighting enemies on their own world. Imagine what they will do when they face something truly foreign. In his cage, Kyle Harrison listened to every word. He understood the alien language because the Drakmori had put a translator device in his head. A small smile appeared on his face. The aliens thought they knew about humans, but they had no idea. Commander Vexthul walked over to Kyle's cage. What do you think, human? Are you afraid of our mighty empire? Kyle stood up slowly. He was not tall compared to the aliens, and his clothes were torn from months in prison. But his eyes were bright and confident. I think you should listen to him, Kyle said, pointing at Zethkar. He knows what he's talking about, really? Vexthul laughed. And what makes your pathetic species so dangerous? Kyle smiled bigger. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. The aliens laughed again, but Zethkar did not. The Rilani had studied human behavior. He knew that when humans made jokes about serious things, it meant they were very confident. Please. Zethkar tried one more time. Choose another world. There are thousands of planets with resources you need. Why risk everything on this one small world? Emperor Kajmor, the supreme leader of the Drakmori Empire, finally spoke. His voice was like thunder, because that small world has something special. Their sun is perfect for our needs. Their water is pure. Their metals are exactly what we require for our ships. We will not change our plans because of fear. Zethkar bowed his head in defeat. Then I have done all I can. But please remember my words when your ships return broken and your soldiers return changed. If they return at all, Kyle said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The meeting was over. Guards led Zethkar away, and Kyle was taken back to his small cell. But as they walked through the halls, the human began to whistle a simple tune. It was an old song from Earth about freedom and fighting against impossible odds. 3 days later, the Drakmori war fleet began to move toward Earth. 2,000 ships, each one bigger than a human city. Weapons that could destroy continents. Soldiers that had never known defeat. But in his cell, Kyle Harrison was not worried. He knew something the aliens did not know. Humans had been preparing for this day without even knowing it. Every movie about alien invasion, every book about war, every game where people fought impossible enemies, it was all training. The Drakmori thought they were going to conquer a primitive world. But they were really about to wake up something that should have been left alone, They were about to learn why the quiet species in the galaxy whispered warnings about the angry planet in the outer rim. Earth was waiting. 3 months passed after the meeting on the alien ship. The Drakmori war fleet traveled through space toward the small blue planet called Earth. Their ships were so many that they blocked out the light from distant stars. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship called Liberty. She was looking through the main window at space when suddenly the darkness filled with enemy ships. They appeared like a swarm of metal insects, each one glowing with red lights. "Captain," said Lieutenant Jake Murphy from his station, "I'm counting over 2,000 enemy ships." They're huge, ma'am." Lisa felt her heart beat faster, but her voice stayed calm. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the aliens are here." On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and saw new stars that had not been there before. But these were not stars. They were the engines of alien warships getting ready to attack. Admiral Pete Collins sat in his command center deep under a mountain in Colorado. He was an old soldier who had fought in many wars but never against aliens. His gray hair was cut short and his blue eyes were hard as stone. "Sir," his aide reported, "the aliens are sending us a message on all radio channels." "Put it on the main screen," Pete ordered. The screen filled with the image of Commander Vexthul. His red eyes glowed as he spoke. "Humans of Earth, I am Commander Vexthul of the Drakmori Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick." Pete Collins looked at the alien for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Send them our reply." The communications officer waited. Pete's smile got bigger. "Tell them to come and take it." The first attack came at dawn. Bright beams of energy shot down from space and hit military bases around the world. The alien weapons were powerful, cutting through concrete and steel like it was paper. Many human defenses were destroyed in the first hour, but the aliens had made their first mistake. They thought destroying military bases would make humans give up. Instead, it made them angry. In New York City, the streets filled with panic as alien ships landed in Central Park. The ships were black and smooth like giant beetles. Doors opened and alien soldiers came out. They were tall and strong, wearing armor that shined like mirrors. Staff Sergeant Amy Rodriguez was leading her squad through the city when they met the aliens for the first time. Amy was a small woman from Texas with brown hair and fierce green eyes. She had been a soldier for 10 years and had never backed down from a fight. "Take cover," Amy whispered to her men as they hid behind broken cars. The alien soldiers walked down the street like they owned it. Their weapons made humming sounds and shot blue energy that could melt metal. When they fired at buildings, huge holes appeared in the walls. "Sergeant," whispered Private Bobby Chen, "our bullets are not working on their armor." Amy watched one of the alien soldiers get hit by gunfire from another squad. The bullets just bounced off his shiny armor. But then something interesting happened. One alien got hit by a car and his armor cracked. Another alien stepped on broken glass and stumbled. "Their armor stops bullets," Amy said with a grin. "But it does not stop everything." Amy looked around and saw a damaged alien weapon lying in the street. One of her soldiers had managed to hurt an alien, and he had dropped his gun. Amy ran out and grabbed the weapon while bullets flew around her. Back in cover, she looked at the alien gun. It was smooth and warm with strange buttons and lights. Amy was not a scientist, but she was good at figuring out how things worked. Rodriguez, her radio crackled. "We need to fall back." "More aliens are coming. Wait," Amy said. She was looking at the alien weapon very carefully. The gun had a small crack near the handle where it had been damaged. Amy could see wires and small machines inside. Amy pulled out a battery from her radio and some wire from her backpack. She was good at fixing things, and this looked like something she could fix. She connected the battery to the alien weapon using the wire. The gun started glowing brighter. Amy pointed it at a burned car and pulled the trigger. A beam of blue energy shot out and cut the car in half. "Holy..." Bobby Chen stared at the weapon. "Get on the radio," Amy ordered. "Tell everyone what I just did. Tell them exactly how to do it." Within 1 hour, Amy's discovery was being shared with every human soldier on the planet. Within 2 hours, humans were using alien weapons against the aliens. Within 4 hours, human engineers were taking apart captured alien guns and figuring out how they worked. Dr. Helen Carter worked in a secret laboratory under the city of Boston. She was a scientist who studied energy and how it moved through things. When the first captured alien weapon arrived at her lab, Helen felt like a child with a new toy. "This is incredible," Helen said as she carefully opened the weapon. Look at these power cells. Look at these circuits. This technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Webb, leaned over her shoulder. How long do you think it will take us to understand it? Helen smiled. Understanding it? We already understand it. It shoots energy. Energy comes from power. Power can be controlled. She held up a small alien power cell. The question is not how to understand it. The question is how to make it better. By the end of the first day, Helen's team had figured out how to make the alien power cells work twice as long. By the end of the second day, they had figured out how to make the alien weapons shoot harder. By the end of the first week, they were building new weapons using alien parts and human ideas. Commander Vexthal stood on his command ship and read reports from the planet below. What he read made no sense to him. Sir, his aide said nervously, the humans are using our own weapons against us. How is this possible? Vexthal demanded. Those weapons are designed to only work for Drakmori soldiers. Apparently, sir, the humans have found a way around that. They are changing our weapons, making them work differently. Vexthal felt something he had never felt before in all his years of conquest. He felt worried. What else? The aide looked at his reports with confusion. Sir, the humans are doing things that do not make sense. They are crashing their flying machines into our ships on purpose. They are using their ground vehicles as bombs. And sir, they are singing while they do it. Singing? Yes, sir. Our soldiers report that the humans play loud music during battles. They seem to enjoy fighting us. Vexthal remembered the warning from the Rilani ambassador. The small blue alien had said humans were different. Vexthal was beginning to understand what he meant. On Earth, the war was just getting started. But already, humans were doing what humans did best. They were learning, adapting, and turning their enemy's strength into their enemy's weakness. The aliens had brought advanced weapons to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had given the primitive world the tools it needed to fight back. And humans were very good at fighting back. The war that Commander Vexthal thought would last 3 days had been going on for 3 months. The Drakmori Empire had never fought an enemy for so long. Usually, other species gave up after seeing the power of the Drakmori fleet. But humans were not like other species. Dr. Helen Carter worked in her underground laboratory 18 hours every day. Her clothes were dirty, her hair was messy, and her eyes were red from lack of sleep. But she was smiling. Around her, dozens of scientists worked with alien technology like children playing with new toys. Look at this, Helen said to General Frank Stone as he visited her lab. She held up a small device that looked like a metal ball with wires sticking out of it. This is an alien power cell. It stores energy using quantum forces that we barely understand. Frank was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. He had been a soldier for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like what Helen was showing him. What does it do? Frank asked. Watch, Helen said. She threw the metal ball at the wall. When it hit, there was a flash of light and the wall disappeared. In its place was a hole big enough to drive a truck through. The aliens use these to power their weapons, Helen explained. But we figured out how to make them explode. We took their technology and turned it into something they never imagined. General Frank looked at the hole in the wall. How many of these can you make? As many as you need, Helen grinned. We have been taking apart alien weapons faster than they can make new ones. Every gun we capture teaches us something new. Every ship we bring down gives us more parts to work with. Across the country, other humans were making their own discoveries. In a garage in California, a man named Tony Russo had figured out how to make alien energy weapons work with car engines. In a basement in Ohio, a woman named Carol Pike had learned to make alien armor into shields for human soldiers. But the real surprise was happening in the cities where aliens had landed. The Drakmori had expected humans to run away from their soldiers. Instead, humans were fighting them in ways that made no sense. In Chicago, Corporal Dan Phillips led a small group of soldiers through the subway tunnels under the city. Dan was a quiet man who had grown up in the city. He knew every tunnel, every abandoned station, and every secret way through the underground. The aliens are strong and fast, Dan told his team as they prepared for another attack. But they are not smart about cities. They think like soldiers, not like people who live here. Dan had spent weeks turning the subway system into a trap. He had placed explosives in tunnels that would collapse when aliens walked through them. He had filled train cars with alien weapons that would explode when opened. He had even figured out how to use the electric rails to power captured alien technology. "Sir," said Private Lisa Adams, "we have aliens entering the system at State Street." Dan smiled. "Let them come. This is our home, not theirs." The alien soldiers moved through the tunnels like hunters looking for prey. They had strong armor and powerful weapons, but they did not know that every step they took was being watched by humans hiding in the shadows. When the first group of aliens reached the main tunnel, Dan pressed a button on his control device. The tunnel filled with light and noise as hidden explosives went off. But these were not normal explosives. They were alien power cells that Dan's team had rigged to overload. The blast was so powerful that it shook buildings on the street above. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the alien soldiers except pieces of melted armor. "Target destroyed," Dan reported on his radio. "Send in the next group." Meanwhile, on the West Coast, civilian engineer Katie Brooks was leading a different kind of fight. Katie worked in a factory that made cars before the war started. When the aliens invaded, she convinced her workers to stay and help the war effort. "We know how to build things," Katie told the factory workers. "We know how to make things that work. The aliens have better technology, but we have better ideas." Katie's factory was now making weapons that should not have worked, but somehow did. They took alien power cells and put them inside human-made launchers. They took alien armor pieces and welded them onto human vehicles. They took alien communication devices and figured out how to use them to jam alien signals. The most successful invention was Katie's surprise boxes. These looked like ordinary objects: a trash can, a mailbox, a fire hydrant, but inside they contained alien weapons programmed to attack anything that was not human. The aliens could not tell which objects were dangerous and which were safe. "The key," Katie explained to a news reporter who was visiting the factory, "is that aliens think too much. They see a trash can and they think, this is for waste disposal. They do not think this might be a weapon. But humans? We look at everything and think, how can I use this to fight?" The space battle above Earth was going just as badly for the Drakmori. Human pilots had learned to fly captured alien ships by doing things that alien pilots would never try. Captain Ben Turner had been a test pilot before the war. He was used to flying new aircraft and pushing them to their limits. When he got his hands on an alien fighter, he treated it like any other machine he needed to understand. "The aliens fly like they are following a manual," Ben reported to his squadron. "They do careful maneuvers. They stay in formation. They follow rules. But these ships can do so much more than that." Ben had discovered that alien ships were built to be much safer than human ships. They had systems that prevented pilots from doing dangerous things. But Ben had figured out how to turn off those safety systems. "Watch this," Ben said as he flew his stolen alien fighter toward a Drakmori battleship. Instead of firing weapons from a safe distance like alien pilots did, Ben flew straight at the enemy ship. At the last second, he fired all his weapons at once and used the explosion to boost his speed. The battleship's shields could stop weapons fired from far away, but they could not stop weapons fired from point-blank range while moving at impossible speeds. Ben's attack punched a hole right through the alien ship's armor. "How did you do that?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who was flying next to him. "I flew it like it was trying to kill me," Ben laughed. "Because it was." Commander Vexthal watched his forces being defeated by creatures that should have been easy to conquer. His reports were full of impossible things. Humans were using nuclear bombs as propulsion for spacecraft. They were turning children's toys into communication devices. They were making weapons out of kitchen equipment. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with a shaking voice, "the humans have started broadcasting music while they fight." "Music?" "Yes, sir. Loud, aggressive music. It seems to make them fight harder. Our soldiers report that the music is disturbing." Vexthal listened to a recording of human battle music. It was loud and harsh, with words about fighting and never giving up. The rhythm was fast and made him feel nervous. "Sir," another officer reported, "we have a bigger problem. The humans are learning our language." "What do you mean?" "They are listening to our communications. But more than that, sir, they are starting to understand how we think. They are predicting our tactics. They are setting traps that we walk into every time." Vexthal felt fear growing in his chest. The Drakmori Empire had conquered worlds by being stronger and having better technology. But humans were not trying to be stronger. They were trying to be smarter. And they were succeeding. "Sir?" came another report. The humans have started using our own weapons against our ships. They are firing captured Drakmori weapons from their planet's surface. Vexthal looked at the battle reports. In 3 months, he had lost more ships and soldiers than in the previous 10 years of conquest. And the humans were getting stronger every day. For the first time in his life, Commander Vexthal began to wonder if the Drakmori Empire could lose a war. The war ended on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after it had begun. Commander Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display that showed the truth he could no longer deny. Of the 2,000 ships that had come to conquer Earth, fewer than 200 remained. His ground forces were gone, his supply lines were cut, and the humans were preparing for a final attack that would destroy what was left of his fleet. "Sir," his communications officer said with a voice full of defeat, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." The main screen filled with the image of Admiral Pete Collins. The human looked older than he had a year ago, with new lines around his eyes and gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "Commander Vexthal," Pete said, "I'm offering you one chance to surrender. Leave our solar system now with your remaining ships and we will let you go. Stay, and we will destroy every last one of your vessels." Vexthal looked around his bridge at the officers who had served him faithfully for years. Their red eyes no longer glowed with confidence. Their proud posture was gone. They looked like what they had become, defeated soldiers who no longer believed in their cause. "What guarantee do we have that you will honor this offer?" Vexthal asked. Pete smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. "You have the word of the human race. We do not want to kill you, Commander. We just want you to leave and never come back." Vexthal made the hardest decision of his military career. "We accept your terms." As the Drakmori fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system, the human ships did not attack. They formed an honor guard, escorting the defeated aliens to the edge of human space. It was a gesture that confused many Drakmori but impressed them all. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Liberty, and watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the debris of a year-long war floated in space like metal monuments to human determination. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the Rilani homeworld." The screen showed Ambassador Zethkar, the small alien who had tried to warn the Drakmori Empire. His 6 arms were moving in patterns that humans had learned meant happiness and relief. "Humans of Earth," Zethkar said, "on behalf of all peaceful species in this galaxy, we thank you. You have done something we thought was impossible. You have shown that the Drakmori Empire can be defeated." "We had help," Lisa replied. "Your warnings gave us time to prepare. Your intelligence reports helped us understand our enemy. But it was your courage that won the war," Zethkar said. "And now, because of your victory, the galaxy is changing. Species that have been slaves for centuries are rising up against their Drakmori masters. The age of empire is ending, this was true. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been conquered by the Drakmori were using human-designed weapons and human tactics to fight for their freedom. The technical specifications that Admiral Pete Collins had shared were spreading from star to star, carried by traitors and rebels and anyone who believed that freedom was worth fighting for. But the real victory celebration happened 1 week later, when a familiar figure walked out of a transport ship onto Earth. Kyle Harrison, the human prisoner who had been captured at the beginning of the war, was finally home. Kyle looked around at the changed world with amazement. The cities had been rebuilt, but they were different now. Human and alien technologies were mixed together in ways that created something entirely new. Buildings reached higher into the sky, powered by alien energy but designed with human creativity. Cars flew through the air using anti-gravity systems that humans had learned to build from captured alien ships. "It is good to see you again, my friend," said a familiar voice. Kyle turned to see Admiral Pete Collins walking toward him. The 2 men had never met before the war, but they had communicated many times during Kyle's imprisonment. Pete had negotiated Kyle's release as part of the surrender terms. "Admiral," Kyle said with a smile, "I see you kept my planet safe while I was gone." "We had help," Pete laughed. "Some smart prisoner sent us information about Drakmori technology and tactics. Without that intelligence, the war might have gone very differently." Kyle had indeed helped from his prison cell. He had memorized everything he saw and heard during his captivity, then transmitted that information to Earth using a hidden communication device that he had built from pieces of his cell's electronics. The Drakmori had never suspected that their human prisoner was actually a spy. 3 months after the war ended, Earth hosted the first intergalactic council meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species came to the small blue planet that had changed the galaxy. The meeting was held in New Geneva, a city built from both human and alien technologies. Kyle Harrison, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the galaxy, stood before the assembled delegates. Behind him, through the great windows of the council chamber, ships from dozens of worlds could be seen in orbit around Earth. "Friends," Kyle began, "1 year ago the Drakmori Empire made a simple mistake. They assumed that because Earth looked primitive, humans would be easy to defeat. They did not understand that humans do not just fight wars. We solve problems, we adapt, we learn, and most importantly, we never give up." The alien delegates listened carefully. Most of them had heard stories about the human war against the Drakmori, but they wanted to understand how such a thing was possible. The Drakmori had better weapons, stronger soldiers, and more ships, Kyle continued. But they had one critical weakness. They could not imagine fighting an enemy that learned faster than they could adapt. Every weapon they used against us became a weapon we used against them. Every tactic they tried became a tactic we countered. They gave us the tools we needed to defeat them. A delegate from the Zelani system raised a tentacle. "But surely your victory was due to some special technology or secret weapon." Kyle smiled. "Our secret weapon was the thing that every intelligent species possesses, but not every species uses. Curiosity. When we saw alien technology, we did not just try to copy it. We tried to understand it, improve it, and use it in ways its creators never imagined." "But what about your famous human determination?" asked another delegate. "Determination is important," Kyle agreed. "But determination without intelligence is just stubbornness. What made humans successful was not that we refused to give up. What made us successful was that we refused to stop learning." As the council meeting continued, ships from the former Drakmori Empire arrived at Earth. But these were not warships. They were trading vessels and diplomatic craft, carrying aliens who wanted to learn from humans rather than conquer them. Commander Vexthul was among them. The former Drakmori general had spent months thinking about his defeat and had come to Earth to understand what had happened. "I came to ask you a question," Vexthul said when he met with Kyle privately. "How did you know you could win? Our fleet was so much larger than yours. Our technology was so much more advanced." Kyle looked at the tall alien for a long moment. "We did not know we could win," he said finally. "We just knew we could not lose." "I do not understand the difference." "Winning means defeating your enemy," Kyle explained. "Not losing means never stopping the fight. We knew that even if you destroyed our cities, killed our soldiers, and conquered our planet, some humans would still be fighting. We would find a way to keep learning, keep adapting, keep trying new things until we found something that worked." Vexthul nodded slowly. "And that frightened us more than any weapon." "Yes," Kyle said, "because you built an empire on the idea that some enemies cannot be defeated. We prove that no enemy is undefeatable if you are willing to keep learning from your failures." Years later, historians would look back on the human-Drakmori War as the event that changed galactic civilization. It was not just that humans had defeated a powerful empire. It was that humans had shared their victory with everyone. The technical innovations that came from the war spread throughout the galaxy. Faster-than-light travel became safer and more efficient. Energy weapons became more precise and less destructive. Medical technology advanced by centuries in just a few years. But the most important change was in how species thought about conflict. The old model of conquest and empire was replaced by cooperation and trade. Species that had been enemies for millennia began working together to solve common problems. Earth became the center of this new galactic civilization, not because humans conquered other worlds, but because humans had proven that any problem could be solved if intelligent beings worked together and never stopped trying to find better solutions. And in quiet moments, when the galaxy seemed peaceful and secure, humans would remember the warning that Ambassador Zethkar had given to the Drakmori Empire. Don't invade Earth. It had been good advice. Too bad the Drakmori had not listened. Now, carved into a monument in New Geneva, were words that every species in the galaxy knew by heart. The greatest victory is not defeating your enemy. The greatest victory is teaching your enemy to become your friend. Humanity had learned that lesson well, and they had taught it to the stars.